Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. This is my initial thoughts video for Elena or Astromancer Elena. And I know I'm making this video quite late as usual now. I seem to always be behind. Appreciate you guys waiting for this, and let's get right into it. So first things first, let's talk about the art, right? I know a lot of people actually like her and think like she's like really good looking. I'm not really big fan of her. I think her design, like clothing and attire and all that stuff, it looks really good. Face, like, you know, I still prefer like the Lua type of face, you know, sexy waifu. She is, I think, an improvement over the original Elena, at least the Ice Soul Weaver. But I think out of my favorites, at least the 3 that we have available, visually, I prefer Ice Elena's Christmas skin. The one with her hairs like tied up and all that stuff. I think that one's my favorite, but I mean this one's not bad as well. Her design is pretty solid. I'm gonna go to my last frame here, but it's not my favorite type of waifu, right? So that's just a personal thing there. Let's talk about her right away. So Light Elemental Ranger Libra. You know, I was looking at the stats here, and I was like, I think this is new. Right? This is a new stat line. Again, we have a lot of heroes being releasing on new stat lines for their class. So this shouldn't be too surprising that they are doing this, so that we're kind of like, you know, it's really unpredictable, like what kind of gear you might need and all that stuff for different types of roles. Her attack, let's talk about that first, because she seems to be built like a damage dealer, but then I do have a question on the purpose of her being damage. I don't think her damage emphasis has to be really big, but I'll talk about that in a bit. So attack is at 1079. Health and defense are just where a ranger should be, I think, with that kind of base speed, and we got some free crit rate and crit damage. The crit rate is no joke. I mean 27, that's like plus 12, right? So like she has an additional crit set basically, and then you got another 10%. Looking kind of like what is that warrior class? I think it's the Leo warriors, like Strays and Sigret. Looking kind of like that with the, you know, crit rate and then also the crit damage, getting the extra stats packed in there, but the attack is of course low, right? We do not need to note that it's around K-Ron level amount of attack. So overall it looks like, okay, she's gonna be bringing to table another source of DPS. You got an imprint concentration self of 18% attack, and I do think that her roles will probably be twofold. One, you know, a debuffing and buffing, so a supporter type pseudo damage dealer, or she's going to be full damage, but I feel that her best use might be the former and not the latter. The latter could work if you're going for like some kind of aggressive cleave comp, so maybe like Arena and all that, Arena, maybe Guildwar, just because the counter mechanic itself is still like heavily used in defensive teams, because there's really that's the only defense, no pun intended, that's the only defense that the player has when they're setting the defensive team, right? Since you have no control over it. Whereas in World Arena, then I think her usage will be based on how many counter heroes the opponent picks. So still I think still a usable hero overall, and it's going to be, but it probably not as, let's say, not as broken as Lua. So in terms of, if you're talking about World Arena draft, she's going to be a more responsive pick, or counter pick rather, instead of something like a Lua or Ran, a Sea Lilius that can really set the stage for the rest of the team, because you ideally get first turn, right? So 115 base speed as well, like it's not, you shouldn't overlook it, right? That's like the same speed as like a Athletica, Leica kind of. I think they're 114 though, but 115 would be like, yeah, actually no, it's around that, right? So like she's pretty fast. She can be built pretty fast, but we're talking about 5 speed slower than Lua, 6 speed slower than Sea Lilius, and then yada yada yada. We got all these speed contesters right now. It's just really hard. I don't think she'll work in that role. She most likely have to be kind of like half damage, half support, but let's go into it, right? So the imprint concentration, imprint release, I think the imprint release really helps her in the, when I was saying the former or latter role, the former role being the more supportery, the latter role being more damage focused. Either way, I think her imprint release and concentration are both pretty helpful, and I would say the imprint release would give you better bang for buck. That's just my prediction. S3, Enraged Star's Retribution. So attacks all enemies, so AoE, with its energy of Enraged Star, decreases buff duration by 1 turn, and then before restricting, and then making them unable to counterattack for 2 turns. When using this skill, increases hit chance by 35%, so it's much more likely you hit like a Violet or something, or Remnant Violet. This skill does not trigger a counterattack. So this skill itself is quite packed, and realistically it's designed to counter almost every single hero that relies on counterattack, right? So I think within this skill itself, and I think this skill would be the most important one to really talk about, and it's the fact that with her released, people are saying that, oh well, what's the point of, you know, farming Banshee, even more so when they keep releasing all these speed heroes with high base speed that really wants, you know, desires a Wyvern set with high speed, right? Like a speed set with high speed. And obviously that has been, I think, an alarming thing for the community again. I mean, it could be that you take the position that, oh, why is everybody, you know, making a big deal out of it? It's just that, you know, we're not really used to this, right? So Smilegate has been emphasizing, oh, we want to make other hunts more relevant. And I think they kind of did with the destruction set buff. It was pretty good for a couple key heroes. Really benefit on destruction set because it is technically the highest gear scoring set that you can give in terms of you'll pump out the most stats, given that you have the perfect substats and the main stats that, you know, align. But counter set was always pretty big, right? Like I said, it is the only line of defense that your opponent has in terms of they're setting their arena defense or Guildwar defense. Really, counter is one of the key factors that keep those kind of defense teams alive, right? So with Astromancer Elena, even though that she needs souls to ignore effect resist, which brings up another point, it's like really Bellion has to be on every defense team now that you're running high counter on. Otherwise, Astromancer Elena is gonna take that turn, right? It's gonna take that turn, and then most likely your whole team is disabled. We're talking about heroes like Senya, Shu, Bellion herself, Rem, any number of these counter heroes, and then on top of the fact that some people just build irregular counter heroes, so like Kayron, for example. He's not irregular, but I'm talking about like irregular, like, you know, I don't know, defensive Ciarmins or something like that, or on counter, right? So with this buff, you know, I know that the community who is looking at the game as a whole would be like, okay, then why even hunt Banshee? All right, you nerf relatively low requirement hero in terms of gear, like Hua-Yang, but then you release Lua, and then you also gave us Astromancer Elena. I can kind of see the point. I personally think that Banshee is still worth farming if for lifesteal and destruction set, but counter set was a big part of it. It was considered a universal set, so whatever stats it rolled into, whether offensive or defensive support, you could always put it on a hero that desires a counter set. Whereas like lifesteal would be ideally more sided on the offensive side in terms of having damage substats, because you want a lifesteal back. Yeah, so that out of the way. How do I feel about that? You know, obviously Smilegate has done more questionable stuff. I'm kind of tired of reacting to it. But like I said, my thing is, I think that Epic 7 is emphasizing speed heroes too much because they like flashy tournaments. Like, no one wants to watch a Frenzy 9 game in like a E7WC. Everyone wants to cleave, right? So like Jintei and Phantom and all that stuff, those fights like near the end were really big, right? And the speed contesting part made it very, very quick, entertaining. So is that part of their plan? I'm not quite sure. I can't speak for them, but that's just what I feel. Anyways, talking about the skills itself, sorry, on that rant. We got a 40% damage mod in terms of the skill enhancement up to +7. That's a total of 40% damage, which is regularly larger than other heroes. However, her damage mods for the S3, let's talk about that first, is 1.1 times mod. Not terrible for an AoE, but it has a 0.9 POW. So really, what you're looking at on an average is 1 times attack mod or damage mod, and then a 1 times POW. But because it's 0.9, you're losing 10% anyway. So really, the 40% Mola here is designed so that that she could be a +15 hero, more or less, without any other reason, in my opinion. So they compensated the additional damage that she would get from the Mola compared to other damage dealers to 40% from a 30%, but then they lowered the POW to 0.9. So realistically, we're looking at a 1.1 and 1 times POW, which is not amazing. With a low base attack, even with attack buff, it might not be really crazy. But like I said, with the crit rate that she gets and the crit damage, the free 10% crit damage, it could lean things the other way. At the end of the day, I think that she's more utility than full damage, so I would not rely on her for that aspect. But the S3, like I said, is packed. Decrease the debuff duration by 1 turn, so immunity gets stripped. Before restricting, I don't know the purpose of it, the restrict for this one specifically, but I guess it could be useful in terms of like it could restrict a Politis or something. Could be useful. But like enable the counterattack for 2 turns. So I feel like Astromancer Elena, the S3 design feels like it just covers most of the current arena defenses that are going on right now, outside of the defenses that are trying to cleave you with like a really fast Lua or Ran or something like that. But I feel like her design is literally to shut down arena defenses and make it much easier to deal with. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. But either way, when using the skill, increase the hit chance by 35. So again, evasion has a lot lower value, so you can't rely on anything like, you know, a Charon's Shepherd of the Hollow, or the double-edged Decrescent. In terms of a Charon on a defense, you always land that, right? You always land that, you always strip the immunity, assuming you have souls. So this is why I'm thinking, my prediction is that if she's gonna be brought into like the arena meta, the guild war meta, everything's gonna be running Abellion just to prevent her, just for the souls, and then potentially even high ER. And that's where the other side comes in, right? So Astromancer Elena, because her damage mod's not insane, she seems to be a setup for everyone else. Plus, she does remove the buff duration by 1 turn, which is huge. It's also, yeah, buff durations by 1 turn is all, right? So in terms of like, it can remove a BBK's immortality and immunity in 1 turn. It could remove, you can't remove FCC's barrier, it still have 1 turn left, but you understand what I mean. So it's actually really good, but it does have to hit. So you can't really strip Rylet's evasion buff or whatnot, even though Rylet's not really popular on a defense team. But let's just say in Charon's case, you definitely get rid of the immunity. BBK on a defense team, you get rid of immunity and the immortal, assuming you can bypass the resistance check or you can ignore the effect resist. But because of her probably practical use, I think high effectiveness is not even too troll. Let's just aim for like higher effectiveness and have her speed tuning to be tuned to what you need. Now in terms of like World Arena, like how this affects, like I said, it would be a counter pick play. Having more of these heroes in your arsenal would be pretty good against those who draft like a, you know, ADS, Artemis Shadow, Shu, like Senya, and then just try to rampage you through, you know, crazy RNG. Astromancer Elena kind of stops that. If we compare it to like what's on the table right now, let's say Rowana and Lionheart Sirmia, they are to counter counterattacks, but they also counter other stuff. However, they are more passive in response, where she's more active in terms of she applies the unenabled attack counterattack and also does all that stuff on the skill description. So it's more of like if you're using her, it's strategic in a way that you want to be more aggressive than passive, which is siding to the favor of the World Arena drafting, at least this season, which is ending soon. But I think the next season is going to carry over this kind of concept, because this seems to be what Epic 7 wants to push. Really aggressive play, speed, and the fights fast. I said fat. and the fight's fast. So that's my thinking on her. So Astromancer Elena will definitely be, unless you have insanely cool concepts for your team comps, your opponents, if they don't run any counterattack heroes, at least you're missing half of her kit. So I do feel that she's more of a responsive pick as a counter pick, but when you're still deciding to play more aggressive. So I'm not quite sure if a double pick like her versus Lionheart Sirmia would always be the best case. But like say for example, Lionheart Sirmia plus Rowana seems to be pretty popular if they are going too heavy counterattack. It just depends on what kind of mechanic you want to counter, right? So anyway, so let's talk about the S3 animation. So I think that her S3 animation is pretty cool. We saw it in the preview, kind of like the montage thing where it has like kind of some, we kind of guessed that she would be a mage, but she wasn't. All right, so like meteor showers, I mean, she even looks the part of a mage, but no, she's a ranger. All right, so Epic 7 continue on that trolley thing. There's one thing I noticed on the S3 animation that I really liked, is that this side, there's like this turn. I didn't read the lore, but I did read or hear some of the video lore. So apparently she and ML like kill people and stuff or whatever. So if you guys are for the lore buffs, you guys can explain that to me. Feel free to drop it down in the comments below. But I'm definitely sure that she has a dark side, since the S3 animations often tell us a story about the character, if not directly, sometimes indirectly. But I do like this aspect of this. So when she calls out the meteor shower, this is dark, right? Even though this part, she is light. So it's quite interesting that there's a transition point where I can't capture all the frames, otherwise I might as well just do an animation breakdown video. But she has like a kind of like a sweeter look to an insane look. And as this is happening, the meteors are coming from the back, so you can see the red outline, the glow. So you get the lighting is coming from the back, and it makes her face in the front dark. But at the same time, she has like this kind of evil look to it, like a menacing look. So it's really nice in terms of like, I think the animation looks good, it's solid, but I like the storytelling of it, right? I like how it brings forth this. This is what I mean, right? So for those of you who know how lighting works, I mean, this is exactly like a very well thought out way of making a cool S3 animation for one, but also telling a story. I'm assuming I understood correctly that she is kind of evil or something, at least the ML version is. But yeah, so I really like that. And then the meteor shower came out, and then it goes boom, 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 and your opponents are blown up. But anyway, she's not a mage. Let's talk about skill 2. So Disciples of the Stars. So after an ally accepts the caster attacks, when the target has the unable to counterattack debuff, activates Worship Me. So it is passive, and then Worship Me can only be activated once every 4 turns. Now, this does trigger Politis, as in it is a skill. It requires 10 souls. And it increases combat ranges of all allies by 15%. So perhaps this is where the restrict comes in. That's what I was thinking. I was like, who is that restrict really designed for? Maybe Politis. But it could be for others as well, of course. Like having restrict is better than not having it, I suppose. Like if you have her fast enough, I think she's faster than ML Charles, right? I think so. So like a lower speed pusher might still struggle with that restrict, right? So it's not like it's just a counter, unable to counterattack debuff. There's restrict debuffs thrown in there, but I do believe that it was mainly designed for Politis. Can be activated up to every 3 turns, which is quite long. It depends on the fight, I suppose, but I don't feel that you would ever see this twice, because you would also have to reapply the S3, you know, for. Yeah, but even though it's for 2 turns, I suppose. But like, you know what I mean? Like they'll shake it off by then, I think. So realistically, you're really not gonna see this a lot unless the fight draws out and you apply the S3 again. Because at the moment, unable to counterattack debuff is a unique debuff to her. So you really can't have it synergize with anything else. Maybe this S2 becomes higher value in the future if other heroes are able to do that as well. So the unable to counterattack debuff. So again, yeah, like I said, Worship Me, it gives you 10 souls and increased combat range by 15%. It's kind of cool. It kind of reminds me of Pirate Captain Flan, but like, so you can see that her synergy is still about like aggressive play. So I mean, it's not the biggest push in the world, but it's not a small one either. So you know, CR boost, AoE, always big deal. And then yeah, the cannot counterattack is the description of the debuff. And then S1, so Melody of Damnation. Attacks the enemy with a punishing melody when a target has a debuff, increases the damage dealt. So on the board here, again a +7, we got a 40% damage, raw damage mod from the Mola, but here are the skill mods. 1x mod for the S1. It is a single target attack, so 1x mod is relatively okay, but the POW is 0.9. So again, they drop it by 10% on the POW, we're giving you another 10% on the Mola. I feel it's kind of like a scam to me, because realistically it's just that they didn't have enough skills to Mola, at least in her design, so they just make it +7 S3, +7 S1. Now like I said, I think that if she is used more like a pseudo damage, I think the testing ground would be, you don't need to Mola S2, because again it takes forever. I think maybe you don't even need to Mola S3. Sorry, here's the slide. You don't need to Mola S3. It is a Fortune cooldown with that -1 there. It's like, is it really worth it? I don't know. Again, the damage mods don't seem to be insane, but if you're doing it for some extra damage on top of more damage coming forward, then why not? But I do feel that like so much of her kit really relies on them getting the non-counterattack skill, and then not the unable to counterattack debuff rather, and then where you would use her, it's to counterattack heroes. So I feel that even though her stat line doesn't really make sense because she doesn't get effectiveness and stuff, I feel like effectiveness chasing on her is not a waste. I do feel that having her speed tune so relatively faster than the rest of your team is going to be an important part of her role. Yeah, and then chasing effectiveness. So really, I feel like her kit overall, my feeling is that while oppressive to like a full mechanic, and has the ability to ignore ER and kind of leans into an aggro comp, so book holders may be the play. Her stat line feels like it's really contrary to what she wants to do. So sometimes I have critiques on like the kit being conflicting within itself. I think hers is fine. The increased damage, though, actually I forgot to say this, is 20% more damage if they are debuffed. Alright, so it's any debuff. It doesn't have to be the counterattack one, so any debuff, it does 20% more. So realistically what you're looking at is a 1.2 times mod on the S1. So her S1 might be the highest damaging skill that she has. If you could spare it, maybe Pen set, I guess. But I personally think that her kit, like I said, sometimes I rate the heroes because the kit just has no synergy. I feel her kit is fine. It synergizes. There is a role in the current meta. She's usable, pickable in World Arena as a counter if they have drafted too many counterattack skills. So like depending on how you want to double punish them. Is it with Rowana? Is it with Lionheart? You know, and in Arena, I think she's gonna be a goddess to some degree, unless Bellion is on every team and everything has ER, then she's gonna suffer a bit. But then that's why I'm saying chasing effectiveness is gonna be good. But then that's where I'm saying that the synergy of the stat line versus her kit just to me doesn't make sense. So that's a unfortunate part on her. But we'll see, right? We relatively have an idea of what a 1x mod does. Like we have Sylvan Sage Vivian as one of the recent MLs that do damage at a 1x mod. You relatively have an idea of where she has damage, right? But the thing is, she has survival, and she cycles pretty quick, and she has access to multiple AoE. So her having like lower damage mods feels like it makes more sense. I think I even have her damage mods right here actually. Yeah, so Sylvan Sage Vivian S1 is 1x mod, S3 is 1.1 times mod, and they all have a POW of 1. But her molas are also 30% instead of 40%. So like I said, realistically looking at like similar damage, except that she has Sylvan Sage has better attack, she has better crit rate, crit damage. So realistically you can chase the attack because you got free gear score. But you get the idea of how her damage should be. So anyways, my personal thoughts are, I think she's fine. Probably a must-have for arena mains. Useful in Guild War, useful as counter pick. Just not broken like Lua, which I'm okay, because if an ML5 is broken, that's much harder to deal with because they have no elemental disadvantage in terms of they can't miss and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think overall, I think she's worth pulling for. I think my theory craft on her gear requirements won't necessarily be insanely high, but people who have an ability to access insanely high quality gear for her are obviously going to benefit from it. But I think that she's going to be an ML5 that is useful, not super broken, but it nullifies a whole mechanic. So in a way it is broken, and it has access to all the stuff that you will want in an aggro comp to counter defensive teams or tank down teams. So that's my thoughts on it. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Astromancer Elena. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm gonna end this for the video recording. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.